Okay, so hey guys, and welcome back to another predictions video, and in today's video I'm going to be predicting the Kholmatov versus Ford fight. If you're new around here though and you haven't yet subscribed, please do so, like video if you do indeed like video, and let's get straight into it. So going into this fight, Kholmatov is 12-0 with 11 KOs and Ford is 14-0-1 with 7 KOs. This fight is for the vacant WBA World Featherweight title. Kholmatov's last fight was a win via TKO in round 8 versus Acosta. Ford's last fight was a win via unanimous decision versus Magdaleno. This is in Ford's home country of America, and Ford is a southpaw. And to speak a bit more about what I've just said there, obviously this is Ford now the vacant title since Lee Wood vacated it. I spoke about this fight quite a lot in interviews, to be completely honest. I mean, I even asked Eddie Hearn about it a little while ago, and it's been a fight which is built up quite nicely, and it's nice to see the fight happening. Kholmatov's had to wait his turn to get this fight, and it's now come round after waiting for a little while of Lee Wood to decide what he's doing and everything like that. But now it's come around. He's got this chance, and it's a nice chance. Obviously, he's coming off an impressive victory, but it was against a not really that credible opponent. I think that was just a more of a stay active fight. But the fight before that as well was also an impressive victory versus Ward for Kholmatov, and Ford's also coming off an actual very good victory for him against Magdaleno. Before that, having a couple fights which possibly stunted his momentum a little bit, and he didn't lose or anything, but it wasn't always the best of performances. And so it's nice to see him beating somebody like Magdaleno in his last fight, and beating him in a dominant fashion against an opponent who has fought at that of a top level, but now he's fighting for a world title. Both quite a big step up for both, and so it'd be interesting to see obviously how this plays out. Ford, like I mentioned, in his home country, used to that now. Kholmatov has come over to other people's countries a couple times to fight, and he's thrived in that aspect as being the away fighter as well. But with Ford being a southpaw and a very tricky one at that, will be interesting to see how it plays out. Also on this card is Lopez versus Abe for the IBF World Featherweight title, in which I think Lopez will win via unanimous decision. I think it is an interesting matchup, this one. Abe's obviously coming off to quite impressive victory versus Martinez, and he really did show that Martinez was not really about it anymore. I mean, I believe Martinez is retired now, but he really showed the age difference and showed that Abe was levels above, and that Martinez shouldn't realistically be fighting at a world level anymore. And he did that by just constantly keeping him at range and just constantly throwing a barrage of punches, and just not really letting Martinez, who is just got a relatively basic style, impose himself and just walk you down. And if you can stop him from walking you down, he's not really that explosive and isn't really going to be anything crafty or trying to find any alternate ways to get in. He's quite one-dimensional, and Abe managed to suss out his game plan and just be able to stop him from doing that with, like I say, a high amount of punches. And so it was an impressive victory for him. But Lopez, I think Lopez is going to be too much for Abe. I think he won't be able to stop him, but I think, just like I say, the craftiness that Lopez has, the explosiveness that Lopez has, and the front foot aspect of Lopez, it's like Martinez but on a different level, and I think he's going to show that different level and then be able to win, like I say, via unanimous decision, not via stoppage, which he is used to. So it possibly could become a little bit frustrating to the later rounds, and that could play a factor, but I think he will still be able to win via unanimous decision. Going back to the main event, so Kholmatov as a fighter, he's a powerful puncher. He's got power in both hands, and it's very nice to see when they've got power in both hands and not just kind of a one-trick pony in the aspect of just constantly trying to go for the big singular shot that they do have. He's a very good finisher. I mean, 11 stoppages in 12 fights. He proved that he's a very good finisher. He's got a good long jab. He's accurate, controls the pace nicely. He keeps a range well. I mean, with his quite long reach and quite long aspects of his fights, he's used to fighting at a mid-range, and he's used to keeping a range, and he does his best work there. He's a high-volume puncher. He sets his shots off his jab very nicely. He's got very good shot variation. His uppercut is very impressive. He finds his gaps well. He's crafty. He's also calm in the process as well, and very self-confident from what it seems. He can handle pressure. He's not really, in my opinion, amazingly good on the back foot, but he hasn't really been put onto the back foot too much. But I feel like he still can handle pressure, and like I say, he's calm and he's composed, and he can handle pressure to an extent. He's explosive, and he is used to being the away fighter, like I mentioned before. So overall, an impressive fighter, an entertaining one. I'm very excited to see how he deals with this step up and what is he like at a world level. And so far he's been putting on some very impressive displays, and that fight versus Ward really put him up there on the aspect of a very impressive stoppage. The negatives about him, I mean, he can drop his guard. He's not overly got, he's not got overly an amazingly good defense. He can be hit. He's there to be countered quite a lot at times, and he does seemingly get hit cleanly within every single one of his fights, or majority of the fights against tougher level opposition that he's faced. So if he's going to be getting hit cleanly with the timing that Ford does have and the speed that Ford does have, will that play a factor? He sometimes can take a little bit too long to return his quite long shots back in range, and that's kind of can lead to him being able to get countered just with his longer shots in general. Just returning his stance and resetting can take a little bit too long. He's not really been against too much of a puncher, and so he hasn't had to deal with getting hurt, and we haven't even been able to see if he can deal with getting hit hard or not. This is, an obvious step up for both. It's a bigger step up in my opinion for Kholmatov, and how's he going to deal with that? Of course, is going to play a factor. But to speak about Ford as a fighter, he's always moving laterally, and that's very nice to see. He's never really just kind of sitting on the ropes too much and doing a bit too much on the ropes, and he is hard to pin down. He's hard to get into just one position, and so he's going to be probably getting chased down throughout a lot of the fight, and he might be able to pick off his shots quite nicely there. He does very good body work. I feel like both fighters have quite good body work, but Ford's is very, very impressive. He's hardly skilled technically. We've seen that kind of high skill, that high technical ability that is there, that you see in a lot of upcoming fighters, but sometimes that potential isn't always there to be reached and doesn't always get reached. But you can see that clear potential there in him. He's sharp, he's very sharp. He can weather storms relatively well, especially early on. He's got great speed, he's got improving skill. I mean, you've seen that in his last fight, the fact that he had improved so much after a couple of a bit more lackluster performances. He had improved a lot, and it was nice to see, like I mentioned. He counters well, he makes you pay when you may overcommit or something like that, or, in Kholmatov's instance, take a little bit too long to return his shots back. He will make you pay. He's very accurate. He's got solid combinations. He can fight on the front foot or the back foot, and he's got good timing, like I mentioned, as well. And so, a well-rounded attacking-wise fighter. But to speak about the negatives, I mean, he's got very good, like I say, lateral movement, but his head movement isn't always crazily good, and he can just move his head straight back on the line and get caught with shots doing that. He can struggle a little bit against constant pressure, and he won't realistically be able to force you back with any sort of physical size or presence. He can become a little bit frustrated at times and try and force the fight a little bit. He sometimes can struggle with winning fights comfortably in general. I mean, he can sometimes allow fights to become a little bit messier than what they should be, letting his hands go, especially early on. He's quite a slow starter, and he improved a bit on that in that last fight. But sometimes he can struggle to let his hands go early, and he can look a little bit hesitant at times. He can be outworked in that instance as well. He can then, I mean, it's just linking down to him being too patient and not really being willing to take the necessary risks. And you understand it as a fighter who has got so much skill and like I mentioned, so much potential. Just being able to willingly take risks is sometimes something that just isn't really something that they're wanting to do, and necessary risks are often needed to be taken. And I think, like I say, he's improving. Kholmatov is the favourite for this fight though, and I think that Kholmatov's going to win via TKO in round 9. I think he's going to be able to get a stoppage, and I just don't believe that Ford's going to be able to just keep constantly moving his head back off on the line and get away with it. And I think he could possibly punish Kholmatov with a couple of his shots, but when Kholmatov gets into a bit of a rhythm and gets attacking wise, seeing that Ford isn't going to be able to push him back, I think he's going to be able to hopefully cut the ring off enough as he can, and then be able to land his longer shots. And if Ford does get dragged into any bit of a kind of war or anything like that, I think Kholmatov is going to be able to be the better, the aggressor, the more powerful puncher out of the two, and then be able to win in that aspect. And yeah, that would be a very big statement win for him. So, who could fight next? I mean, the featherweight division at the moment isn't in the best of states. I mean, a lot of fighters have just kind of moved up to super feather. I mean, we've got like Wood, Warrington, Lara, uh, I suppose the likes of like Conlan as well gone. There's quite a few fights gone now, and there's the Lopez fight. He could possibly fight Lopez next, but I feel like he does kind of need that of uh, like a mandatory challenge to just keep rebuilding. I mean, he'll only be 13 at that point, so he does, in my opinion, like I say, need a mandatory challenge and just a tough level opposition, but somebody who is possibly beatable. So somebody like a Vasquez could be that of a good fight. Even a Ramirez, it seems like Ramirez is probably going to end up fighting Espinoza again because of how good the first fight was. But he's with Top Rank. That could be a good fight. Or if he's really wanting a tough fight, Fulton Jr. has moved up to featherweight now, so that could be a tough fight. But that would be a very tough fight. But we don't really know where Fulton's head's at coming off the loss to Inoue. So there's a lot of things to work out. I think there is options there, but you just got to be able to find them. And like I say, I feel like he could do with a mandatory challenge, just to like I say, keep rebuilding and keep building, I suppose, in general. But yeah, that is it for today's video. Hope you did enjoy. Like the video if you did indeed like the video. Subscribe if you're new, and thanks for watching.